So good morning. My name is Reverend Dr. Ron Fox, and I want to welcome everybody to our Sunday service for the Center for Spiritual Living, Space Coast. And if there's anybody watching this week that's never been to a Center for Spiritual Living, we believe there's one God, many paths to that God, and we're here to love, honor, and support you, no matter what your divine path is. And the Center for Spiritual Living, Space Coast is a safe haven for people of all beliefs and lifestyles, whoever you are and wherever you find yourself on your journey of faith, you're welcome here. And so to begin our service this morning, Reverend Jenna Watkins is going to open us with a prayer, and then one of our congregants, Barbara, is going to honor us with a reading.
Let's just take this moment to go within to that one place where we feel the presence of the One Most High, recognizing that this is a holy moment wherever we recognize and accept and feel and acknowledge that high holy power that is the source of all life. It is a holy moment. It is that holy second that gives us love and support, encouragement, and guides our path. And I know that right here, right now, as we sit in the awareness and the presence of that power of love, that love's flowing through each and every piece, filling our hearts with peace and love and joy, and the expectancy that all is well, the expectancy that good is our birthright. We live in that expectancy, and that expectancy guides us forward. And it guides us to this moment where we come together, united in love, to share with each other and to hear the words of Reverend Dr. Ron Fox as he shares his ideas, his thoughts, his heart, his wisdom that empowers each and every one of us to go deeper within, to explore the truth of who we are, and to live our lives in love and joy. And for all of this, I do give thanks, and so it is.
Good morning, everyone. Peace begins when expectation ends. This is a quote by Sri Chinmoy. But what does this mean? Have you ever anticipated a future event, thinking that it will be the experience of a lifetime, only to feel let down when it did not bring the joy or feeling of achievement that you had imagined? In truth, the experience did not seem worth the effort or sacrifice of time and perhaps money, or the missing out of alternative opportunities. You may be left feeling regret, disappointment, resentment, and maybe even anger. Conversely, have you ever had a commitment to an activity only to find that as the time arrives to do it, your desire and enthusiasm for it has waned and you just as soon skip it? But a commitment is a commitment, so you soldier on and show up, only to find the activity much more enjoyable than you had imagined. In fact, you had a very good time, maybe even a life-changing experience. The difference in these two scenarios is the underlying expectations associated with each one. In the first scenario, you had high expectations that what you anticipated would fulfill you in some way, perhaps that it must do so. When it failed, you suffered a mixed bag of unpleasant emotions. This wasn't inherent in the experience. It was the result of attachment to a specific outcome. In the second scenario, you had no expectations. Well, no expectations isn't quite right. You had the expectation that the experience would be nothing special and likely not worth the effort. But you were not attached to that expectation. So when the reality turned out to be surprisingly satisfying, you experienced joyful surprise and pleasure, happiness. So this idea that peace begins when expectation ends means to me that if we release our expectations and instead remain open and allow events to unfold, we may experience pleasure and joy, like a child who is always surprised at the wonder of life. At worst, we will feel free of the negative emotions associated with life not panning out the way we expected it to. In either case, it's a better strategy for living than holding up a measuring stick made of our own notions of how things should be and finding life not measuring up.
Thank you, Barb. So if you hadn't guessed by Reverend Jenna's prayer and what Barb Loftus just read, my title today is, What Are You Expecting? So I want to begin with some thoughts from Joe Dispenza, Dr. Joe Dispenza. And he said, it's possible for us to think greater than our present reality. And if you think about people like Martin Luther King Jr., Marie Curie, Gandhi, Edison, they all had something in common. They had a dream or a vision that was greater than they were. And that belief was so strong within them that they actually began to live as if it was actually happening. And I want to read to you Dispenza's logic on this, because it's kind of going to be the basis of the rest of this morning's message. He wrote, when our behaviors match our intention, when our actions are equal to our thoughts, when our minds and bodies are working together, when our words and deeds are aligned, there is an immense power behind any individual. So let's talk for a moment about the law of attraction, which I'm sure everybody listening to this is probably well aware of. So the law of attraction basically says that we attract what comes into our lives, and we do it with our thoughts. Our thoughts are like magnets. The universe responds to what we're putting out into it. So if we think about what we don't want, that's what we manifest. And if we think about what we do want, if we expect good to come into our life, that's what shows up. And one of the important things to remember, it's not about the words that we speak. It's about the feelings and expectations behind them. So, excuse me, the real question is, deep down, what are you expecting? You know, let me give you a couple of examples. So you're never going to be abundant and have riches if you believe that poverty is your natural state. You're never going to have the relationship you want if you believe deep down that you're not attractive, that you're not sexy, that you're not interesting. And so we can ask ourselves a couple of questions. What price have I paid for believing this? You know, in the riches aspect that I just spoke about, what price do I pay for believing that I'm not worthy of having money or being abundant? What price have I paid for not believing I'm attractive enough? And we can ask, why did I get stuck in this belief? And to begin changing, we can ask ourselves, what would I have to believe in order to succeed in this area of my life? What would I have to do differently? When we know and expect that by changing our beliefs, we'll produce the results we want. And why? Why is that? Because when we change our belief, just like Dispenza said, when we change our belief, our behaviors change. And when we change our behaviors, we get a different outcome. We can begin to see that the pain in that the pain that the belief has caused us in the past, and that it's going to continuing to cause us. Ernest Holmes wrote, one who desires to heal must stop seeing, reading about, discussing, or listening to conversations about sickness. There's no other way under the sun, except as we let go of that which we do not desire and take that which we wish to have. You know, it seems to me that there are a lot of people that are afraid to expect the best because they don't want to be disappointed. When we expect the best, though, we live with a great feeling of expectation. Think about this. It's like we get what we're hoping for twice, because when we expect it and when we think about it and when we put that out into the universe, we live with this feeling of already having it and the good feelings we're going to have. That's the first time. And the second time is when it actually shows up in our life. I saw something this week that I never knew, and it led me to, well, you'll see, I want to talk about it. Research has shown that the single biggest factor in determining how well a student will do in college doesn't depend on the student's intelligence. It doesn't depend on where they came from, anything else. The single biggest factor in determining how well a student will do in college is how they expect to do. And that brought me to thinking about my own life. So when I was in college, when I was in high school, actually, even when I was in grade school, I had people telling me all the time, geez, you're so smart and you never live up to your potential. And the truth is, I didn't care because I could get good grades without studying hard. So I never studied hard. When I was in high school, I almost never studied. And I would know the night before a final, literally the night before a final, I could cram and I could get a C. And that seemed really good to me because the rest of the semester I goofed. And my dad used to tell me all the time that I could do better, that I could be more. I wrote about it in my first book, Experiencing the Beacon Within, and I had a dedication to my father. And one of the things I wrote in there, I'm just going to read a sentence. We used to sit and listen to music together on the weekends, and he would really use that as a way to talk to me and to tell me how he wanted me to live. And he would say to me, you're so smart. You can have it all. Go to law school, be a writer, work hard, go to college. Don't blow it like I did. The world is your oyster. For some reason, in the summer between high school and college, that message stuck. I was thinking about it this week. I have no idea why it did, but I remember I was the first person in my immediate family, my parents, aunts, and uncles, that was going to college. And I had all of this support and love. And I remember thinking that I really need to buckle down. And I wouldn't have used this terminology then, but I actually expected that I was going to do well. I expected it. So I go to New York University, and the first year they had blocks of classes. So there was a group of us, maybe 25, and we all took the same 6 classes. So you got to know one another pretty well. And here's why I'm telling you the story. So one week before, the week before finals, a group of about 10 of us were sitting around in the student lounge. And, you know, like college kids, were talking about all different things. And one of the guys says, why don't we go around and see what marks we expect to get on our finals next week? When it came my time, remember I had 6 classes. When it came my time, I said, I expect to get 5 A's. And people started to look at me like I was from Mars. And one of the guys who was sitting opposite me looked at me and he said, you're not going to get 5 A's. You're not smart enough to get 5 A's. And I actually didn't respond. I'm not going to tell you what I was thinking when he said it, but I didn't respond. I got 5 A's that semester. And the next semester, I got 5 A's. And I wound up getting an academic scholarship for my sophomore, junior, and senior year. When I thought about it this week, I expected I was going to get those 5 A's. On some level, I knew it. And I did. And, you know, I was thinking, again, I could have let that guy and the looks I was getting, I could have said, well, maybe I'm not, you know, and I might have had a different outcome, because Ernest Holmes says, if we allow the world's opinion to control our thinking, that's the demonstration of it. We get what the world thinks, and we don't need to live with what the world thinks. Let me give you another example of what I'm talking about that's very different. I read a story this week about a prisoner who had a very long sentence, and he was depressed, he was sad. And one day he's lying in his bed, his bunk, and he looks up on the wall and he sees something he had never seen before. But some other prisoner who had his cell before him had scratched in the stone, "This too shall pass." And for some reason, seeing that changed this prisoner's life. Every time he went through a difficult situation, he thought to himself, "This too shall pass." In effect, he set the expectation that this was going to go away and something better will show up. When he finally was released from prison, he wrote it on the dresser by his bed. So it was the first thing he saw in the morning. He put it on his car. He put it all over and lived by this expectation: when times get tough, this too shall pass. And whoever wrote the article said, even on his deathbed, when his family was surrounding him, he comforted them by saying, "This too shall pass," meaning they'll be able to move beyond their sadness and grief and go on with their life. You know, to be truly successful in life, we need to touch our innermost power, not our external power. You know, what do I mean by external power? You know, describing yourself by your job title. Well, you're going to get a different job. You might get laid off. You might get fired. You know, some people, I mean, I look at myself as a parent, but parenthood changes. You know, your kids leave home. You can see yourself as a spouse, but that can change. Or you can, when you retire, you lose all of your titles. I will never forget the first job I had out of graduate school. The senior vice president of the company was negotiating a company-wide union contract. And he had announced that after he successfully did that, he was going to retire. And my boss said to me one day, he said, the VP's name was Herschel. He said, "Take a look at Herschel, Juan. Look at how much power he has now. That the entire company is depending on him doing a good job." He said a week after he retires, The biggest decision he's going to have to make is, do I mow the lawn on Monday or do I mow the lawn on Wednesday? You know, life changes. Ernest Holmes tells us that life is lived from the inside out, and that inner power never leaves us. You and I are the centers of power in our own life. So I want to read you a quote by the German philosopher Goethe. He wrote, "Treat someone as if they are what they could become, and that is one day they shall be, what they one day shall be." Let me do it again. I have a tickle in my throat, I'm sorry. He wrote, "Treat someone as if they are what they could be, and that is what one day they shall be." So treat somebody like you expect them to be. So one day, many years ago, was sitting in an office, and I picked up some kind of newsletter, and I read about the story I'm going to tell you in a minute. And I was so taken by it, I actually put it in my briefcase, took it home, and Becky and I bought the book. So it's a book titled The Art of Possibility, and it's written by Rosamund Stone Zander and Benjamin Zander. And Benjamin, at the time, I don't know if he still is, was the conductor of the Boston Philharmonic, and he taught at the New England Conservatory of Music. And one of the things that he experienced was that grades stopped the students from being all they could be. They were so worried about what grade they were going to get that they moved into fear, and they wouldn't take risks. They wouldn't be everything they could be. And he and his wife, I believe she was a psychologist or is, but I'm not sure. They talked about it. And here's the idea that they came up with. So one of the classes he taught ran from September to May. It was 2 semesters. So they started in September and ended in May. And at the beginning of the September term, this is what he told his students. In this class, every one of you will get an A. And here is the one requirement. He said, within the next 2 weeks, you must write me a letter dated next May. And the letter must begin, "Dear Mr. Zander, I got my A because," and you have to tell me what happened to you by next May to earn this grade. He said, you have to place yourself in the future looking back, and phrases such as, "I hope," "I intend," "I will," they can't appear in the letter. And he tells them that he's especially interested in the person they will have become by next May. So what he was doing now is expecting, again, he was expecting that they were going to be A students. I want to read to you 3 of the letters that students wrote. The first letter is a letter by a lady named Esther Lee, and she was a Korean flute player. She said, "Dearest teacher, Mr. Zander, I received my grade A because I worked hard and thought hard about myself taking your class. And the result was absolutely tremendous. I became a new person. I used to be so negative person for almost everything, even before trying. Now I find myself happier person than before. I couldn't accept my mistakes about a year ago. And after every mistake, I blamed myself. But now I enjoy making mistakes, and I really learned from these mistakes. In my playing, I have more depth than before. I used to play just notes, but now I found out about the real meaning of every piece, and I could play with more imagination. Also, I found my true value. I found myself so special person because I found out that if I believe myself, I can do everything. Thank you for all the lessons and lections, because that made me realize how important a person I am, and also the clear reason I play music. Thank you. Here's another one. Dear Mr. Zander, I got my A because I had the courage to examine my fears, and I realized they have no place in my life. I changed from someone who was so scared to make a mistake in case she was noticed to someone who now knows she has a contribution to make to other people, musically and personally. Thus, all diffidence and lack of belief in myself are gone. So too is the belief that I only exist as a reflection in other people's eyes and the resulting desire to please everyone. I understand that trying and achieving are now the same thing when you are your own master, and I am. I have found a desire to convey music to other people, which is stronger than the worries I had about myself. I have changed from desiring inconsequentiality and anonymity to accepting the joy that comes from knowing my music changes the world. And here's the last one, and it's kind of a short one. And it was written by a young man from Taiwan. He said, I was number 68 out of 70 students. I come to Boston and Mr. Zander says, I am an A. Very confusing. I walk about 3 weeks, very confused. I am number 68, but Mr. Zander says, I am an A student. I am number 68, but Mr. Sanders says, I am an A student. One day I discover much happier A than number 68. So I decide I am an A. And Zander said that this student had a brilliant flash and hit upon the secret of life. He realized that labels he had been taking so seriously are a human invention. It's all a game. The number 68 is invented and the A is invented. So we might as well choose to invent something that brightens our lives and the lives of the people around us. I think the letters speak for themselves. When we expect great things, that's what we demonstrate. Thank you for being here this morning. God bless you and have a great week.